Welcome to the Machlokes channel. Today, this is going to be class number 19 in the discourse Kol Machlokes 5672, which is the sixth discourse in the great book B'Shosh Ekdimu 5672. Today is a very special class because today is the first class in our second cycle, which means we began a year ago, and now thank God, with Hashem's help, we've concluded an entire year of study. As we discussed yesterday, we finished 130 classes, and Be'ezrat Hashem, we continue on and delve deeper with today's 131st class, which is the opening class of the new year of learning, Be'ezrat Hashem. So we thank Hashem, we thank all those who listen and participate, and because there's definitely, without a question, even though I'm not interacting with you necessarily, but the rebounding energy, the Or Choser from the people who study it, definitely subconsciously or on a super energy level, impacts my ability to understand and to learn and to give it over. So it's like a circle. Today's class was dedicated by Isaac Schultz, and this is in honor of his son's bar mitzvah, Levi Shalom Moshe ben Yitzchak Binyamin, which is today. May he grow up and continue to grow l'Torah, l'chuppah, l'maisim tovim, and have a lot of chassidus, a lichtige chassidus and nachas from him, and from all your other children, and much bracha and much light to you. And thank you so much. He was the one who alerted me to the idea that it's actually a year since we started. So I'm very thankful to that. Much bracha and mazel to everybody. Okay, so we are now, this is going to be the fifth class in chapter 25. We're beginning mainly the last paragraph in chapter 25 and the last paragraph in the Maamor, in which we're going to swing back to the opening of the discourse, in which he presented a few questions on the Torah portion. Remember the way we've discussed this many times. These discourses are a continuation of a deep thought. That's the main primary occupation of chapter after chapter. But then the Rebbe divided them and he delivered them on different weeks. And in every week he added a heading and a closing point in which he presents certain questions related to the Torah portion. And then based on the fundamental concepts that he's explaining in the discourse, he uses them to explain these ideas in the parsha. What that really tells us is that in every parsha of Torah, you have all of Torah. Because how in the world, if you're holding a middle of subject, find that particular subject over there? Because the Torah is one unit. And just like we know in every little particle of the DNA of our body is the entire DNA of the whole body. So in every part of Torah, which is also called Adam, of course it contains everything. So if you know the Torah from the essence, then you can see like we learned. Actually, it's the subject over here that in every detail, the author of the idea that we've been learning the last few days can see the entirety of it. So you can see that in the Maamor, that in every parsha, he can find that particular point that he's discussing right now in the discourse and show that like how that's the message of the parsha. Anyways, before we do that, let's just go swing back to what we were finishing yesterday. So in yesterday's class, we discussed how even though a student that receives only a part of the download of the teacher cannot see the big picture, and maybe vaguely they can, but when they receive the full download, which means they go through all the classes and they completed all the details, and then they could see what the teacher sees. But even then, they don't have the sharpness, the clarity, and the pristine brilliance that the teacher sees in it, because the teacher was coming from a complete different place. The student is coming from the details to the idea, to the point, and the teacher is coming from the point to the details. However, we did learn, and this is the last point, that there is a way for the student to be able to capture the clarity that the teacher has. Maybe this is what it says, that a student does not come to the mind of their teacher until 40 years. What that means that even though a student, even after he gets the lesson, in these 40 years, the teacher has given the student many lessons, but you only really get it 40 years later. So what does that? Obviously, it means that you didn't forget about it and shelved it for 40 years. It means that you continue studying it for 40 years, you review it and review it and review it, and then you'll understand it the way your teacher understood it. Adaite the Rabbi. And the reason for that is because it's not impossible for the brilliant essential light that is shining in the mind of the innovator, of the teacher, to be transmitted to the student. It's not impossible, but it comes through enormous amount of work. Why? It's not enough for the student to receive all the details, but the student has to delve deeply, 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 deeply into all the details. And really break it down more and more into all the very, very sub details and sub details of sub details, and really to all the crevices and nuances of every little class, of every point, and see how every point is part of this greater idea that the teacher is teaching, relating it to the greater idea. And the more they delve into the details, which we might think that by delving into the details, you're going away from the main point. And yes, temporarily you are. It's impossible to have the sharpness of the kernel of the idea when we say in Yiddish patchkening, you're completely preoccupied with a little flower, right? A little corner thing. It's hard to. However, if you keep on digging into those details deeper and deeper and deeper, and you keep getting, that's when you get the ultimate depth. Ultimately, you'll rise to an ultimate depth, and that depth will be the original sharpness of the originator of the idea. The Oyer Klali, the great light, will come back once you can go into the details and experience Iskalos. Iskalos is very important, which means to see how every detail complements all the other details, how all these parts are all part of one whole, and how every one of them is an integral part. If it's missing this part, then all of them are missing. It's like you have to cherish every single Jew, and to not just with the overall general idea that every Jew is super precious because he's a Jew, but on an individual level, to really, really, really get the ultimate light that is shining in the collective entity called the Jewish people, which who can even begin to imagine what that godly power is? Think about the Jewish people throughout all the generations. Klal Yisroel as a whole, the Jewish people as a whole, from the beginning of time to the end of time. The power of that light in the world, the power of that godliness. So, and then there is the one individual Jew living in one particular time. So you can love, and we know it's a mitzvah of Avos Yisroel, and we're told to love. And a lot of times you can love Jews because you dismiss their individual characteristics, because you think that there's nothing uniquely individual, special about this person. And then instead, you just dismiss it all and say, oh, this person is part of the greater whole of the Jewish people, and that's why they're precious. But we're talking about that. Then you'll never feel the true greatness of the Jewish people. But if you can find the individual uniqueness and specialty of every single person, and then recognize how that individual quality complements the whole, and how it's without that there is a lack in the greater picture, in the greater energy of all of Israel. And they're like the Rebbe, like we see, no Jew, not one Jew. The Rebbe loved and taught us how every Jew is individually precious. Individually precious. And when we have that attitude, and then we can really, really tap into the true or klali, to the general light that there is in the Jewish people. The same is with the Torah, the same is with every element, the same is with creation as a whole as well, with the universe. When you can see how each piece and particle has its own quality and at the same time is part of the bigger picture of the entire system, then you can come, and therefore by finding the integration of one with the other, how everything can coexist, even complete opposite different elements can coexist with each other, that's when you can come to the ultimate brilliant light of the concept that's above the details. That's above the details. Okay. Apia now, so based on all of this, we go further now. Yuvana Mishnah. We'll understand the Mishnah. Which it says that every argument that is for the sake of God, it's a Mishnah in Perek, Ethics of the Fathers, which says that every argument, whenever there's a argument or a dispute that is with good intentions, simple words for the sake of heaven, then Sefer L'Skayim, this is going to last. If and every machlokes that's not l'shem shamayim, not for the sake of heaven, which means it's for personal motives, personal agendas, and driven by ego or whatever it is, then ain't Sefer L'Skayim. It's not going to last. Then the Mishnah says, what's a machlokes? Give an example for what is a machlokes that is l'shem shamayim, that is for a higher purpose, is the arguments between the Torah sages, Hillel and Shammai. It states Hillel and Shammai, but it probably applies, I would imagine, to all the sages that are arguing in the Talmud, in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, and in the further disputes that there is in Torah. Over here, it's because these people were not interested in just voicing what they thought, but they wanted to come to the ultimate truth. Therefore, they argued with each other, different opinions, but it was in order to reach truth, not in order to state their views. And therefore, it's going to last, whatever that means. And then, what's called a machlokes, that's not for a higher purpose or for a ulterior motive, or it is for an ulterior motive. It's not altruistic. That is the fight of Korach and his assembly, who fought against Moshe. So first of all, what's this connection to the parsha? Because that's parshas, that week is parshas Korach, so that's why he's talking about this. This week, the Torah, the week that this Maamor was said was the Torah portion of Korach. Okay, so now he presented. Let's go back to the questions that he asked. What was the questions? Question number one was, what do you mean that if it's a good machlokes, if it's a machlokes for higher purposes, for the good reason, it's going to last? Seeming to imply that machlokes is a good thing. Disputes are good. If you want it to last, we hope that, we see an argument, we want to end the argument. And here we're saying, no, if you're having good intentions and the argument's going to last, that means that this fight is going to continue forever. That doesn't seem to be a good thing. The other thing is, what does it mean? Why is it that when it comes to the machlokes, the argument of that's l'shem shamayim, that's for a higher purpose, it lists the two sides, Hillel and Shammai, that two sides, both parties that were fighting or arguing or were disputing. And when it comes to Korach, it says Korach and his assembly, but it doesn't mention the other side. Korach and his assembly were both on the same team. They were fighting against Moshe. It doesn't say Korach and Moshe. So he asked the question, why is that? So, then he said earlier, it's because Moshe was fighting l'shem shamayim. First of all, Moshe wasn't fighting. It was their fight. It wasn't like he came to fight. They attacked him. The other element is that if to whatever degree Moshe was responding and pushing back at them, that was for the sake of heaven. That wasn't for Moshe's personal agenda. So you can't call it Ein l'shem shamayim. It was only not l'shem shamayim from Korach's side. It was not for a higher purpose. Okay, but over here he's going to answer these questions. And he's going to say, based on all of this, every argument which is l'shem shamayim, is Sefer L'Skayim, is going to last. The hina you do it is no. The concept of Erev Machlokes goes deeper than just a fight. Machlokes over here means a division. Every time when there's a single unit that gets divided. Obviously, that happens when there is a fight in a community, for instance, God forbid in a home or in a community and so on and so forth, where there is a split, and that's a division. It can be a division amongst two students, right? They're sitting by their teacher. We just know this is the time of Sfiras Omer, Rabbi Akiva students. They had a division. This one understood this way, and this one understood the other way. So all these divisions, difference of opinions that become enumerated. And a division starts where Hashem takes the potential 10 Sefirot and he divides them into 10. And initially they're all one. They're all one what is it called? Conglomerate of whatever that word is. It's one entity, one merged, where you don't see the differentiations. And then Hashem differentiates it. So that's the meaning of Machlokes. So now there's two ways that you can have a division. You can have a division that's l'shem shamayim. That means an appropriate division, which serves the purpose, which over here would mean for a higher purpose. And there is a machlokes and the division that's not l'shem shamayim, which means that it's serving the parties who are arguing themselves, not something higher than them. So what would that mean? When the division, the split, the differentiation is made for a higher purpose, then the splitting parties, when they become individualized and splintered, and each one goes off kind of to express whatever it has to express, its view, its understanding, its talent, its contribution, its whatever it is, it's with the intention of developing an individual aspect, but then tying it together with the rest of the community. In other words, of course, it recognizes that it needs to go and develop itself the way it sees fit, according to its characteristics, according to its nature, according to its purpose and unique personality, if you might say, of what it has. But it recognizes that that's not the end goal. It recognizes that it's part of a much bigger tapestry, so to speak, a much bigger piece of art. It's a much bigger symphony of music or whatever it is. It's one note within something much larger. A part of the play that it has to play, but it's part of a greater movie set. It includes all these actors and all these players, each one doing their part. And then the division is a good division, because actually, when each one goes off and does their particular thing in its place and in its right moment, considering the fact that there's more to the objective than just itself, then the very, very splinterization of it, the very, very separation of the pieces, causes a unification between the essential components over here, much deeper than when they were all sitting together in one room before they expressed themselves. When they were non-expressed, although everybody was in peace, you had a community sitting together. In other words, if you have a group of people sitting together and you didn't ask anybody to speak up, and you have unity. Why do you have unity? You have unity because no one is fighting. Why is no one fighting? Because no one got the microphone. So everybody's sitting over there together. It's a congregation. It's a beautiful community. Some communities, no one fights. And the reason no one is fighting is because the rabbi is such a dominant being that he shuts everybody up, and no one expresses themselves. No one can say a word. So if everybody is silent and no one says a word, it's a very happy community. It's like a person who has peace in his house because he so dominates over his children that no one fights because the children are terrified to open their mouth. So of course it's peaceful, but that's not the peace, because it's a superficial unity. It's not real. The pieces, the parts, the children, the students, the congregation are not really feeling unified one with each other. They're just silenced, and so they're not fighting, but they're not one. But when you give everybody, when a rabbi or a teacher in a classroom or a parent with a bunch of children recognizes the unique talents of each child and allows each one of them to contribute what they need to contribute, although there are moments that it feels a little competitive, and there are moments that there will be conflicting roles, and there might be moments when one will get into a shout out with the other because each one feels that it needs to be at that moment. But if it's done, and if they all have a proper orientation before they get on, before they're all sent out, it's like, the sage, we have it in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan says to his, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says 5 students, and he says to his students, go out and come back to me and tell us which is the best way for a person to live their life. What's the best way? Ezehu, what is it? Ezehu, midatov, what is the word? Midatov, I got it ready. Sheyiva lo ya'adam. What is the right path that a person should choose? And each one came back with something else. But he told them, go out. But over there, when he sends them out, he's sending them out not that each one should open up shop on their own and become and separate himself from all the other students. It's go see the way it is, come back with your understanding, and then we'll put all of them together. And we'll unify them all together, and we'll create one beautiful set of beautiful midos that will complement each other. And that's what he says in the end, that he finds Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, and he says that his teaching includes all of them. But he's including all of them. He's not dismissing, oh, this was not them, sorry. You didn't win the contest and get out of here. That's not what's happening. So when you're able to do that and your intention is to create something big and beautiful, so it's precisely after each child, each student goes home and does their own project and does and then they all bring the projects together, and the teacher is able to take every single project and decorate the classroom. And now it becomes so beautiful with all the individual projects of every single student. Suddenly the students start appreciating each other on a very deep level, and they feel connected. They feel like one unit. They feel like one class. And they're so much more unified than when they were just silenced and they sat together because the teacher silenced them. So this is the idea. You need to separate. You need to individualize in order to come to a deeper unity, to a deeper connection. But then there's a different way of splitting something. When the teacher is not orienting their students at all, and the teacher is and also not a very dominating person, so he's kind of relaxed, and the students start each one trying to dominate the classroom. Or in a congregation when the rabbi is very timid and quiet and doesn't have control over his congregation at all. You have it in many communities, and certain community members that are loudmouths or muscle people start muscling their way, and then you have conflict, and each one wants to run the thing as they want. And this guy's got a lot of money, and this one has a big mouth, and before you know it, it's chaos. There's a fight going on, and here, they're not coming from a place where they're seeking a harmony. They're coming from a place, it's my way or the highway. Each one wants to express their opinion. And this idea is originates all the way up in the manner in which those 10 hidden sfirot that are in the Ein Sof are going to emerge. There's one way where they will emerge in a manner of tohu, and there is another way they will emerge in a manner of tikkun. In the world of chaos, in the world of tohu, the motivation that motivates these 10 hidden potentials to come out is that each one is motivated by who they are and what they are. Each one sees themselves as their purpose. Their purpose is their selves. The chesed sees the purpose in the chesed itself. Sees the beauty, the importance of kindness. Well, what can be greater than kindness? How can anything outdo kindness? Kindness is the most beautiful thing. So the kindness comes out with all of its power, just as kind. Doesn't want to hear of anything else. And discipline and gevura sees the quality of discipline and gevura, and it can't hear anything else. And when they come out to expression, it's about themselves. Then you end up with clashing, with a clashing forces that cannot last, which means the whole thing collapses. And we know that's what happened in the world of Tohu. There was a Shviras HaKelim, a shattering of the vessels. However, when the 10 hidden Sfirot, they're in a state of potential. Now again, when they're in a state of potential, they're all getting along with each other because it's like they're all silenced by the Or Ein Sof. It's like the teacher that is silencing them, not because they get along with each other, but because there's something much bigger than them that they're included in, that they don't even feel themselves, and therefore they're silenced. But when they will come out, they will fight each other. However, when they communicate first with the Or Ein Sof, that's before the division of the 10. When they're inspired to go out and shine, when the Chesed is inspired to go out and shine, not because it wants to go out and shine, but because the Chesed communicates with the Or Ein Sof that's higher than Chesed. And the Or Ein Sof reveals to the Chesed and the 10 Sfirot that the reason I really have potential for Ein Sof Sfirot, for infinite Sfirot, but I particularly envision a beautiful world, a harmonious existence, a beautiful world, a universe. And for that universe, I need all to express myself through these 10 attributes. And you are part of one big project that's much bigger than the individual energy that you represent. When they submit to what is higher than them and prior to them, when they're being sent out by a source, and the source is above the hidden 10 Sfirot, the Or Ein Sof that's prior to the 10 Sfiros Sagnuzos, when it is dispatching them to go out and express themselves, then they're going out already with purpose. And when they go out on purpose, although each one goes and builds its own structure, they do it with the consideration that they have to build together with all the other forces. And that leads them to integration. And that integration leads them to the deepest appreciation and oneness where they have one with each other. And then they're completely unified. So let's read this inside. Is known. There's two types of division. One of them is chalkos, is a division, which leads to an integration. When the spheroids get divided, those 10 hidden spheres that are all together, when they later drop down to become individual, chachma emanates to become chachma, and bina emanates to become bina. It's a cause, to eventually bring the spheros into a perfect harmonious state of appreciation, integration, interwovenness, interconnectedness, interdependency, if so to speak, one on the other. Commission is parallel, like we explained earlier, that there's a possibility that the spheros don't emerge that way, but they would. The way God emerged the 10 spheros is precisely through a tzimtzum, and that's because Hashem is like the first rabbi who wants to create a beautiful congregation in his community, a beautiful community, and inspires his congregants, each one to shine in their own way. This one has to become the gabbai. This one has to become the waiter. This one has to become the organizer who organizes the events. This one has to help out with whatever. This one, it could be the chazan, and he can be the, right? Each one. And it's purposeful. In other words, it creates a sense of unity and oneness, and recognizing the individual talents and abilities of each one of their community. And he informs them that's from that motivation he drives them out. He is the inspiration for their expression. Right? What happens then is when each one expresses itself, it's with a diminished. They don't come out like bulldozers, because when you come out with like a bulldozer, there's no room for anybody else. They emerge in a more controlled, mindful way, and then each talent is expressed, but it's expressed with in an edel way. Edel way means with more, in a more elegant manner, not in a very aggressive, sharp way, but in a. Hashem does that with the spheres. He's mama'et the or. He diminishes the light, like we've been learning in the Maamor. That it's possible that it wouldn't be this way. As we said before, if the congregants on their own, without being inspired by something higher than them, decide to voice their opinion, then it's going to be aggressive. Then it's going to be without consideration for anybody else. If they would come out as they are in essence, that means they would come out serving themselves. Then they wouldn't come out one after another. Each one would come out and grab center stage, and obviously that would cause a shoving and a pushing around, because each one wants the microphone. Each one wants to do their thing. And then there wouldn't be an ishtalshalos. There wouldn't be you go out first, you go out second. The recognition, I have a role to play, but my role is number 8. But it's not if it's about self, then I just want to do my thing. But if I understand that there needs to be a Kohen, and then a Levi, and then a Yisroel, and then there's a whole system over here. And it would have been loyaya in ishtalshalos. There wouldn't have been ishtalshalos. V'hiskalalos. There wouldn't be an integration. Rak al yedei hatzimtzum. Because Hashem emanates the spheres, He slows them down through the power of tzimtzum. But as a spheres in the 10 spheres, shenimshachu spheres pratiyos, the spheres are coming out individual spheres. But here's the next point: not just they're individual; they could come out individually and crash with each other because they all come out simultaneously. No, but they come out with the recognition that they're serving a higher purpose, and therefore they're coming out b'bchenas miyot. The light is being diminished. It's more controlled by the mind. It's more controlled with purpose. Then they line up in an appropriate line. One comes out after the other. Chachma comes before Bina, and Bina comes before Das. And they line up one to respect each other. And then they also integrate one with each other. And this is the idea, Machlokes. This is a Machlokes. This is a Machlokes, a division for a higher purpose. What does it mean, a higher purpose over here? It's consistent with the deeper intention, the true intention, so that there should be an integration and a harmony, a synthesis between everything together. That's the purpose of the individuality. When that happens, so we're going to see a deeper meaning in L'Shem Shamayim. We find this idea that you can splinter something in order for a deeper oneness. We find that when God creates Adam and Chava, it says, so in the Sefer, he brings, this is not my connection, but in the Sefer Shiurim, B'Tafrei Shayin Beis, I told you sometimes I look at his stuff, and his explanation over there, he brings this connection to this idea, which I really liked, is that we know that Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, when they were initially created, they were attached to each other. They were one unit. There was one body. They were two people, but they were attached. It says back to back. What that means is that they were two people living together without fighting. They had nowhere to fight, but they weren't looking face to face. They were looking back to back, and they would always be together. There would never be any arguments or nothing going on between them, but they would never have the beauty of harmony. What does God do in order to enable them to come together, to have harmony and have the deepest bond? He first disconnects them. As he has the surgery and he separates the rib, which according to the sages means he separated the backside from the front side. And Chava goes on to become Eve goes on to become a whole person onto her own. He even, he creates her on a whole different planet, meaning a whole different chemistry to what, where, and when she is. She's very different than him. And then they have to meet and fall in love with each other and then get married and then recognize how different they are and try to figure out how they can coexist with together and then recognize much more how each one complements and how they need each other and how they can't live without each other until they become so deeply bonded up with each other that they are inseparable for all of eternity. They create life together to the point that they merge. They're one soul. Although he's male and she's female, and although they are very different in so many ways, but they recognize how it's together in their, precisely because their differences, how they can be one. But they would never reach it. And that involves, guess what? Every marriage involves some fighting and some arguments and some difficult moments. But is it not worth it to create? Why are you putting two opposite people under one roof, and you're causing the possibility for fighting and all of that? Better live alone. The answer is, or rather, definitely better leave them attached. So it's attached would mean that they're all. That there is a fake unity. It's an external, superficial unity. A deep unity allows for each one to play their part, but with the understanding that they are serving the higher unit as a couple and as the builders of their home. And that's the idea that this is representing. Hiskalalos. Marriage is this element of tikkun and hiskalalos. Okay. Bezrat Hashem, we'll continue into tomorrow's class.